children of poly relationships, what was it like growing up? When I was young, my folks dated a couple of couples. One was very long-term, we were military families, but they managed to finagle a transfer together. So wow, that would have been like 8 years at least? They kept in close romantic contact when they separated, but I'd if they qualify that as still being together. They were my aunt and uncle, essentially. We and their kiddos got sent off to grandparents, theirs and ours, together to give them alone time. It was kinda a given that we'd all see each other every couple days, either they'd come to our house or we'd go to theirs. Not for them to sneak away for sexy time, but just to spend time together and be a family together. I knew I could go to them about anything, I could talk to my folks about, and even some things I couldn't. That closeness continued even when my own folks split. I'd what standing they had with them after that though. Unfortunately, my aunt kinda had a psychotic menopause and we had to go NC with her. Nobody knows that I'm still in contact with uncle though. I'd how my mom would feel about it. But he stayed a rock for me when my own dad didn't. Same drama as any other family, I guess, just more players on the stage. It wasn't a huge deal when I was a kid, essentially it was just like hanging out with your parents and their friends. Some of my mom's so's had kids my age that I got along with really well. That being said, a little while ago my mom was flirting with a guy and referred to me as her mono kid in the same tone I've heard ultra-conservative folk refer to gay kids, so our relationship is a little strained these days. Her other daughter is 12, so I'm really not certain why that comment was anywhere near necessary. Edit, I forgot to mention, while they have never had any authority over me, she refers to her so's as my grandparents because they're not quite step-parents, which is kind of funny. Edit 2 to explain some things. Mono is short for monogamous. I am not poly. The mono kid comment was mostly hurtful because the way she said it implied it was some sort of scandal or like it was a bad thing. Obviously this is one thing that's bad. She's not a horrible parent and person overall, but disapproving of some of my life choices just because they're different from hers is not a great parent move either. No, I was not born into a monogamous relationship, so the comment really came out of left field. Ramp parents is a play on words because they're not married, so they are not my step-parent, so ramp is instead of step as in stairs. Ramp-parent had never even crossed my mind, but I can never unthink of it, so thanks for that. Also, thank you kind stranger for the hugs. Sorry if the original comment was confusing, English is hard tongue. I took a class with a Dr. Awasum at University of Houston, downtown for a while. He would talk about his childhood growing up in Cameroon in a family with one father and about a dozen mothers. At mealtime, the kids would run a route from one mother to the next, all grabbing a bite from each. He says he was 12 when he learned which mother gave birth to him. When he came to Houston to study, he applied at Rice University. When filling out the application, he asked for an extra page to provide the names of all his mothers. In his culture, he was considered to be the reincarnation of his grandfather. At a special ceremony every year, he would offer his grandfather's advice and answer questions on his grandfather's behalf. It was also in his authority to prescribe punishment for his father on this occasion. When Awasum came to the States, he would attend the annual ceremonies by phone. Edit, apparently, Dr. Awasum passed away last year. There's a brief tribute to him here. https://www.forevermist.com/lawrencechiawasum/about. Hard for me to believe there isn't more about him online. Would love to have had his memoirs. Not germane to life as a kid in a polygamous family, but a few other tidbits from Dr. Awasum. I was taking his course on something like cultural diversity, and his take on the topic was that we shouldn't expect immigrants to assimilate into American culture, but he did think immigrants should adapt and not just segregate. He offered 2 examples of his adaptation to America. 1. He found a fellow Rice student one day admiring one of the many squirrels that roam the campus and can often be hand-fed. He tried to explain to her that squirrels weren't some sort of lawn ornament, but were properly considered only as food, as would be the custom in Cameroon. To illustrate, he grabbed the squirrel, wrung its neck, and put it in his backpack to prepare for a meal later. Then he went off to his next class. Well, campus police picked him up from class to discuss the incident. They made it clear he'd be expelled if he continued to hunt the campus wildlife. From then on, he says, he ate no more squirrels. 2. Instead, he settled for cheeseburgers. Still, he would never have lettuce on his cheeseburgers because that was the sort of fodder his people reserved for cattle. To him, it was like eating grass. So, cheeseburgers yes, but lettuce no. 3. He wore a hairstyle that was a bit bushy and always rough cut, as if he'd trimmed it himself with pinking shears. He explained this was the sort of style men in his culture would wear to show they were too busy doing manly things to take time for a perfectly manicured, carefully shaped hairstyle. My parents were poly since well before they got married and I was born. Mostly it was just boyfriends or girlfriends that would visit. I didn't know anything about sex, they didn't tell me anything inappropriate, although they did make sure that I wouldn't gab about who slept in what bed when I was young. They were dead scared of child services getting involved. One of my mom's boyfriends became a lot more serious and he moved in when I was about 8 or 9. It was a lot like having an uncle move in. He became part of the family, drove me and my brother to places, got involved in our interests. I told people he was my uncle. He had another girlfriend aside from my mother, too, openly. He broke up with my mother in a big way, which they kept private from me, and moved out when I was maybe 14 or so. It might have been hard for my mother, but it wasn't traumatic for me. We kept in touch for a few years until he moved farther away for a new job. It wasn't like a divorce experience, more like my uncle moving out. My dad had a serious girlfriend too, but she was also married with a kid my age, so she never moved in with us but we went and visited as a family a few times a year. She's great friends with my mom to this day. Her kid and I were good friends for a while and drifted apart as we got older, a lot like cousins. Also I had my aunt who had no sexual or familial relationship with either of my parents. She was just so close a friend that she was practically family and she'd take me for a lot of weekends and summers. I thought she was legit my mother's sister until I was 8. Also there were other friends that would move in while they got back on their feet, and I have no idea if sexual or romantic relationships were involved. We treated them like family guests. So basically we were a normal nuclear family with normal kinds of family relationships that just weren't conditioned by blood ties. Edit, I think my parents were kinda neglectful and self-centered, but not in a big way, and possibly not related to having multiple partners. I think it's just who they are as people. Hey, it's a post for me. Honestly I think it's way more boring than most people would think. Most of the time, my mom wouldn't introduce a partner to me unless it was a long-term relationship, so most of the time I got the single mom experience. I think the most exciting thing was going out for dinner to meet someone new, and occasionally my mom would date someone who had a kid my age, and we would awkwardly play together while our parents were on a date, as in, we were playing in my room upstairs and a movie date or SMTHN was going on in the living room downstairs. Really for the most part it was so completely average other than knowing my mom had 2 girlfriends and eventually I also got a stepdad. The worst part was around 6th-8th grade when kids found out and started bullying me for it, asking all kinds of disgusting sexual questions about my parents. No one wants to think about their parents having sex. Eventually I learned to just not tell anyone unless we were close and I knew they were cool. I only ever had one person I trusted enough to actually come to a family picnic where my mom's partners would all be there. My mom's partners aren't my parents but they are a part of my life and my family. They're wonderful and supportive, and have helped me through some horrible dark spots in my life. I'm grateful to have such a wonderful, loving family. So yeah, not very exciting, I know. But it's my life. My parents weren't poly until I was a toddler, I guess. I thought of the other couple as just nice people my mom and dad were close with. They met online and came to visit, they all clicked well, and eventually the other couple moved in with my family. I didn't make the connection they were all together until I was a teenager. I suppose I thought they were all just roommates of sort, though bed swapping and sharing was occurring the whole time. By that point, my mom and dad had divorced and so had the couple. My dad married the other woman, and my mother married the other man. My mother has divorced and remarried again, and my father and stepmother are still together, almost 20 years later. DL, doctor. In retrospect, it's just kind of an odd situation, but I honestly didn't even realize my parents were poly growing up and now my dad is married to the lady instead of my mom. Polygamy is very common on my dad's side. My grandpa has 30+ wives. My dad has about 4 last time I heard. Anyway, it was awful. Hated that part of my childhood and my mom escaped and left with me when I was a child. Sometimes I see him. It's just super awkward around him and my half-siblings. Edit, my fault, I thought polygamy and polyamory were interrelated. Also I grew up in Papua New Guinea. It's very common. Yes, my grandpa actually has 30+ wives. I do not know my dad's side that well, which is why I can't elaborate that much. Hope that clears things up. Smile. My son is a member of a throuple with 2 women. The first is his college GF who always had an open relationship. During a long-distance period of their relationship he started very casually seeing girlfriend too, but over time it got more serious and now they all live together. Things are happy and wonderful for them, but I really do worry about how the dynamic would change were someone to fall pregnant. I worry about jealousies and inequalities rising up, but mostly I worry for my future grandbabies. The societal pressures and teasing from outside the home, as well as possible resentments and issues within the home. I can see how, if things work the way they are planned, it could be a wonderfully supportive and rewarding way to grow up, but you know what they say about the plans of mice and men. So I actually really appreciate the insight of this thread. I want to be supportive of my beloved throuple, but part of being supportive is discussing possible pitfalls in hopes of avoiding them, and this has already highlighted some. It's also pointed out some of the positives, so thank you. I know a few young adults who grew up in poly households. From what I recall of them as children/teenagers, there was a fair bit of neglect, because often their parents would put their date nights and partner time ahead of the needs of the children. There was also some resentment among the childless partners of people who dated poly folks with children, since there was often an expectation that the childless partner would provide free childcare, because children are a community responsibility, when another partner wanted to go on a date with someone else. Unicorns, the hot buy babes sought out by hetero couples exploring polyamory, were particularly vulnerable to this. I have a dad and two moms. Back in junior high, it was really hard describing to my friends that mom number 2 was not a stepmom. My usual explanation was just, oh, it's not just my dad having 2 wives, it's also my mom having a husband and a wife, like a love triangle. In the beginning I was so naive and went with the flow and didn't care. I told them, as long as you're happy, I'm happy. Back then I thought it was cool to have a second mom. She brought 2 little girls with her, so I was also like, oh hell yeah, now I get 2 little sisters. I've always wanted little sisters. It's been about 6 to 7 years now. I think they're all well over their honeymoon phase between the 3 of them. It used to be just me, mom, dad, and my little brother. I feel like now that I've matured and am able to form my own thoughts and feelings, I sorta despise them for doing it. I miss my old family and how it was. One of them is always fighting with the other, there is never peace. Plus it drives me nuts when mom number 2 tries telling me or my little brother what to do, cause ya know, she's not my mom. At first it was fun and something new, but now I feel like it tears my family apart fiber by fiber. I want to forgive my parents, but I can't. They didn't care about how I or my little brother felt, they just did what they want, and it drives me crazy. I wish it's still just the original 4 of us. Now there's 7 and it's too much for me. To clarify, this isn't even a culture/religion thing. My mom and dad were friends with mom number 2 and her former husband. They hung out a lot, but mom number 2's ex-husband was verbally abusive and ruined their fun a lot of the time. My dad used to tell me they just wanted to take her under their wing when she was nearing the end of her marriage. I'm on mobile and the story is too big to text out, lol. If you have any more questions, I'm open to answering.